Wishing for a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We warmly welcome you to the platform of Gear Up and for the fourth session organized under Gear Up Online series. So, here we are with a very interesting topic to be discussed today as Sri Lankan youth. As a generation who are looking forward to take up the country, it is our responsibility to prepare ourselves in a more empowered manner in order to make a better Sri Lanka. Though youth is the most beautiful era in one's life, it is also the period which one should be empowered for a successful future. As per the famous saying of Franklin D. Roosevelt, we cannot always build the future for our youth, but we can build our youth for the future. So we are here to make that dream come true. You must be wondering who we are. We are the official students body of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. To know more about us, let's watch this small clip and rejoin soon. but still, that means we are doing more and more work. So as a cool team, as a Chartered Accountant Student Society, we thought of building up a team and make you gear up for your future. Before the session starts, please know that you will not have a separate question and answer session, but you can send your questions while the session ongoing, and they will be answered by our guest in the meanwhile. In this journey of gearing you up, indeed, we are not alone. For the day, we are with a wonderful resource person to discuss on the topic youth empowerment. So to introduce her, she is a strategic planner, the co-founder of Enable Lanka Foundation, founder and managing director at Remote Workforce, a proud past president of CS Student Society for the year 2013 and 14, and a master's holder from Applied Science in University of Sri Jawadhanapura. It's none other than our own Miss Crystal Reed Vijaysurya. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome you to Gear Up.
Good evening, Marshi, and thank you for having me today with the Gear Up session. It's actually an honor to be here with all of you, especially a wonderful audience I see. I mean, like you said, I've been a past president and a student society member, so it's great to come back and to give something to the community and for my fellow colleagues here.
Very nice to hear that, ma'am. And so today we will be having a conversation on youth empowerment. So to start that, ma'am, I would like to know, what is youth empowerment? Can you give a description or idea about what is this? Because we know youth empowerment, we have heard this word in many places, but still, as a youth myself, I have got no idea about what is this youth empowerment. Can you brief us on that?
Sure. Thank you for that question, Marshi, but I must say there isn't a fixed definition in my books for youth empowerment. But what I'll share is something that I strongly believe in, which is called the 6C concept. This is where you look at 6 different areas, trying to groom yourself as a young advocate of various fields that you come from. And the first and foremost thing is the competence. When I say competence, this does not mean your academics only. This also means your competence towards social issues, your cognitive competence, your health, and also your vocational competence. And the other thing is compassion. Now, this is once again a very important thing. Most of us do forget compassion is a part of who we are and how we groom ourselves. This is more to do with the fact that you feel more empathetic towards social justice and social issues, and also not just towards others, but also compassion towards yourself, how you see yourself, how you give yourself that comfort to grow. That is also equally important. And other thing I would say is the confidence. Of course, it's knowing your self-worth, your value, and the capacity you have and how much of a stretch you can go for. It's very important that you understand and to draw the line also, because sometimes you see, people can be overconfident on things. I myself have been there. So it's really important to know where to draw those lines as well. The other thing is actually on connections. Again, this is very important, especially for a community like us, with just 22 million population in the country. We are truly connected. It's just we need to get out of our comfort zone, find those allies. We need to find those paths. And when I mean connections, this does not mean people who are just influential or powerful. This means we go and connect with each and everyone out there, finding a more human side to ourselves. And the other thing is on the contribution. Again, this is very important, what you give back to the community. This is utmost important. And I always, I repeat this statement every time I meet someone, because this is something I've heard from a mentor of mine. What he always says is, I mean, we all are in a way privileged comparing to someone else in the society. So we shouldn't be ashamed of the privilege that we have. But what we should be ashamed of is if the privilege that we have does not serve a purpose. So that is the level of contribution we're looking for. Enjoy your luxuries, but don't forget you must and need to give back in order to develop and to ensure that there's growth in the community as well. And finally, it's character. This is once again most important, how you take accountability, how you take responsibility on things, how you respect human life and diversity is utmost important. I think for me, if you ask what is youth empowerment, it is that holistic person covering these 6 concepts. And I myself, again, learning in this journey, and I hope you would get something out of these 6 concepts that I shared.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to hear that privilege should serve the purpose. Those words are really amazing. And with that, I'm leading for my next question, ma'am. What is the societal expectation from youth? Because we see, even when we see the news or from the elder generations, we can see that there's a complaint that the youth is not serving its purpose. What is this expectation really?
Right. So before I go for the expectation, I think it's also important we understand the dynamics here. So if you take our country right now, we have closer to, if I'm not mistaken, closer to 4.6 to 5 million young people between the ages of 15 to 29, and which is on closer to 20% of our total population. Now, comparatively to our region, we are much lower or marginally below when it's come for the youth population in the country. They even say by 2040, 1/4 of the population will be elderly. I know we are talking about youth empowerment, but the reason for me to bring this up is we are this elderly population eventually. We are now transitioning from a youth to a much older generation. And that's important therefore, it's important for us to understand what we can do and how we give back and how we groom ourselves and also the generations that are looking up to us. So when you talk about the societal expectations, I would say, again, in my opinion, purely, it could be of various kinds. One thing, and the most important thing, one way they look at us is youth as the people to create a society of just and equitable, and to make this place a better place than we found it yesterday. And that's something they expect from us, where we can reconcile, where we can respect each other, where we can integrate with each other. However, with that, there's another part of the society, I must say, where they could also, where they come from a very traditional setting, and they also kind of try to put in their narratives, their agendas towards us, and expect us youth to kind of take that mission forward, right? So this is actually a very alarming expectation, I would say. So this is basically, they are building their own narratives, and they're kind of manipulating and brainwashing the youth to take it forward, mostly in the political sphere, I would say. But so this is what I'm trying to say is society's expectation could be of 2 ways. And it's up to us as the youth to identify which path we want to take and which part of the history we want to be a part of, right? So, and the other thing is, especially when it comes to youth empowerment, this again, I always tell myself, when I walk into a room, if I feel like I'm the smartest person in that room, I don't see a point of me being there, because for me, of course, I can give whatever I can and groom the next person. But in order for me to go to the next step, I need to go to a place where there are smarter people, much intellectual people who would give me constructive criticism. If I'm going to be in that comfort zone where I'm going to get all the praise, I don't think that's a place that I can grow. And this is something that I've seen, especially even in my times at the student society. What I felt was we are in this rat race to kind of, get the qualifications, have the first class, to get the prize for the CA exams, etc. But somewhere down the line, we forget, how are we different to the next person? How is Malshi or how is Chris different to another person? What is that point where they see as Chris or Malshi as someone different? Is it my qualification? Because anyone can have this qualification. So what is that change? What is that trigger point is something that we really need to understand. So this is kind of my expectation for myself. And I think even for the youth, if it's an expectation you think that can be useful in your life, I would say embrace it because it has worked for me. Because again, I'm going to tell this, I wasn't the smartest person in the CA class or anything. I did not win, prizes. But the point why I'm here is because I had that opportunity and I used that platform to challenge the status quo. I used it to make a difference, and it helped me. And that's how I've come here. So that's kind of how I would portray the expectations of myself and the society's expectation of me and the youth around me.
Yeah, that's really nice to hear, because that again drags us to a point that we should not run. We are in a rat race, as simply say. So this again leads me to my next question. As you told, we have to know like how are we different from the person next to us. So it's about how we react, or our sensitivity, the qualities, humanity. Those are the things that we can see how are we going to be different from the person next to us. So leading to my next question, ma'am. What do you think about the reaction of the youth in Sri Lanka towards the societal problems? Are you thinking, are they sensitive towards this? There are so many societal problems around in the Sri Lanka. Environment issues, and even this COVID itself is a societal problem. So how do you think, is this youth is reacting in a proper way?
Yes. So in this also, Marshi, again, I would say, I feel that in today's context, youth are much more informed. They are more aware about social issues, not just locally, but also internationally. And that is largely also because of the access towards technology and the devices that we carry today. So it's quite interesting how we have moved towards this situation, this position right now from where we were decades ago. So I think in that sense, yes, we are much informed and aware. However, as a movement, I think we can do much, much better. We can be more stronger. But again, there's a fundamental issue here where we, although we come together as a community, there is so much of division because of XYZ reasons. And one of the biggest reasons I see why we as youth cannot come together is this racial division that we are seeing now in the country. This has happened before, and we've experienced the unpleasantness of it. We faced the challenges of it, and clearly we do not want to move towards that because of someone else's political ideology. But this is the part that we really need to address. We as a nation, what has happened is, especially the youth, again, this is from what I've experienced and what I've heard whenever we go out there, talk to people, we are more divided by our race and our ethnicity than anything else. So this is something we must address if we are to create a stronger movement in the country, or to get ourselves into a more or to grow and to develop. That is something that we really must address. And the other thing is, historically, if you take Sri Lanka, we as youth have played a major role in the political arena. We have got involved in so many ways. And like I mentioned earlier, we've tasted the bitterness, the violence of it as well. Although we have done all of these, comparing ourselves to countries like Thailand or Indonesia, our youth activism in political and civic engagement is quite low. It's less than or equal to about 10% for the last data that is being out there. Voting is one of the biggest things that we do. Close to about 70% of the youth do exercise the universal franchise. But other things like media campaigns, to signing petitions for trade union activities, demonstrations, assembly, running for elections, being politically active, these are really in a very minimum level, or not to the level that we are expecting. And of course, there's a larger population of the youths that are quite non-responsive towards this as well. I'm sure you also would have come across your friends who are saying, well, this time I'm not going to vote. I'm done with it. I'm just tired of this country, or this is a time for me to move out of the country. And so many things. These are kind of the thoughts among many of the youth in this country. But again, if we don't come together, this is going to continue, and leaving this country is not the answer for everyone. So how do we kind of come together and create a country, a better country for all of us? Because in a way, it would be kind of, it's okay if you have that opportunity, you can leave and you can do whatever you want to do. It's up to you completely. But we shouldn't forget that there is a portion of our community, especially the children and youth of this country who are unable to do it. So we need to kind of be there for them. We need to drive this country towards progress, at least for them. This is what I mean by, even in my earlier statement, how we use the privilege to serve a purpose. The privilege could be you having that influence in you. The privilege could be you have the power in you. So what are you going to do about it? So this is very important. And other thing is, again, like I say, youth are quite strong together. But again, the movement, the problem that I see is that we are also kind of groomed, or even systematically, I would say, systematically groomed to accept the bare minimum our political leaders do, right? Again, we see this on very much on social media, even when we go out into the community, when we meet people, you know, it's, if your political leaders do the bare minimum and you are accepting them just because they go by your political narrative, or just because they are in your political view, I don't think this country is going to progress. Be it the current regime, or whether it's opposition, or be it any other party that you would be voting for all your life, or wherever, I would say, if you see something wrong, address it, challenge the status quo. But do not cheer for the bare minimum. If they do the bare minimum and we cheer it, we are only letting them slip away from what they should be doing for the community. I mean, this is something that is faced even now, experiencing with the COVID situation. We know there is more that we can do. This is not where we should be heading to right now. But how do we kind of come together is a question. And one biggest barrier, like I mentioned, is where this sudden racial ethnic division that we face, and also the silence of a majority of the youth, which is alarming. And these are things that we need to change if we have to create if we are to create a stronger youth movement.
Yeah, now by listening to that, I get this question to my mind. Now, as you say, there's a big issue in youth. So why now, as per you say, in before eras, the youth was more powerful than the current. So what is this? Why has this situation arisen? What do you think about that?
I think, again, Marshi, this is due to number of factors. Again, like I mentioned, the more powerful, the influential people keep spreading their narratives and their ideologies, people kind of, get stuck in it, or people get attracted towards it, and they feel like this is what's norm, this is what's right. So also this comes from that the education system that we also have in place, where we are kind of spoon-fed. We are given things to kind of memorize and then pass an exam. We hardly get that opportunity to question. Like I said, challenging the status quo doesn't come to us naturally, unfortunately. It has to be groomed in us. And in order for us to groom that in ourselves, we need to be in the right circles, with the right people, with the mindset, people who kind of challenge you as an individual to go to that position, right? Because you rarely see a person calling a spade today. That's also because of these dynamics, the power dynamics in place. Because the more there's a power imbalance in the world, in the country, the more the youth kind of, find it challenging to get to the mission they want to get to. And in that, I would say even the social media, even our mainstream media plays a huge role in it, where they can really make those changes and allow more space. Because right now, if you look at, because the current situation, social media has become a only advocacy platform, because unfortunately, there is no freedom to movement or freedom to assembly with the COVID restrictions. So what we have is a social media page. If that is what's going to take you to raise your voice, if that is what's going to make you take to the next level and challenge the leaders of this country, I would say use it. Because the more you use it for the right reasons, the right cause, there will be change. The more we are silent, there is no movement at all. We are not going to be the disruptive people that we are technically supposed to be as a youth in this country.
Yeah, so that exactly answered my next question about what is the impact of social media and the mainstream towards youth. So now I'm skipping that because you already answered that. And moving for my next question as, what is the opinion on diversity and inclusion when it comes to this youth?
Right. Marshi, maybe before we go to that, on the social media angle, I would also like to say that lot of people again criticize social media in a very negative way, because it's kind of, I think the social media activism or the advocacy kind of transpired, especially during the COVID period. And people were actually even bullied. They were not given the opportunity to raise their opinion. I would say these things will happen, whether you do it on social media or not, whether you do it offline also, it will always happen, but just keep pushing for it. The more we collectively do this, there's going to be some form of a change, and we see that happening, and we have witnessed it. So that's something I really want to push here, especially for the youth who are here listening to us today. And sorry, on your point on the diversity and inclusion, I think, again, this is a very topic close to my heart, I would say, because diversity, inclusion, and equity is a vast topic. Now, when I say diversity and inclusion, it could be about gender, age, ethnicity, disability, minority groups. It could be anything, right? So the thing here is, when it comes for diversity and inclusion, what I've seen in our country, and even in other countries, I would say, that we always try to pick the narrative we want to fight for. For an example, a group of people will say, I want to fight for women's rights. Another might say, I want to fight for ethnic minority rights. Another might say, I want to fight for disability rights. So the problem here is that we do not fight in coalition. We must do it in coalition. We cannot pick the battle when it comes for diversity and inclusion. Why I say this is, for an example, you take a young woman with a disability from an ethnic minority group. Now, where does this person fit in? Is she a young woman, or is she a woman with a disability, or is she someone from an ethnic minority group? Now, where does her right, where does her voice now fit in? Which narrative will she fit into? So diversity and inclusion cannot be fought or asked for in isolation. It has to be together in whatever we do. And I will also kind of touch upon some work that my team and I do at Enable Lanka Foundation. This is a passion project that myself and two of my co-founders, Janita Rukmal and Viranga Pereira, started a few years ago. Our main focus is on mainstreaming disability rights and making them inclusive, especially in the corporate sector, and giving them the opportunity to be successfully employed, giving them more dignity and respect, right? Now, when we try to do this, number of times when you reach out to this corporate sector, maybe HR or the management, what a very common answer we get is, so this year we are focusing on women's rights. So maybe next year. So the thing is, we cannot wait for them to give us a year to focus on change. Change has to happen organically. Change has to happen together. So if we are talking about diversity and inclusion, you have to address it together. And this is something that I would push to anyone that I work with, because it has to happen in that way. You cannot pick your battles when it comes for this. And so in a nutshell, I would say this is my opinion on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, on what you said, it's really pathetic to see that the corporate world is reacting towards these kind of sensitive topics in such a manner, I would say. So also, as we discussed earlier, and you said that the education system has something to do with this youth empowerment. So my next question is going towards that. How the current education system influences on our youth empowerment? Because all of us, our audience is also the youngsters who are engaging with many education activities, maybe university or maybe professional courses, likewise. So does this education system gives us the right empowerment? What do you think on that?
So I would say the education system has progressed from where it was decades ago. It has come to this place today with all of those changes, which is great. And we had the free education system in this country, which we are all grateful for, and most of us are a part of it. But however, having said that, there are so many things that needs to change, especially when it's come for inclusive education, I would say. Again, this comes from the work that we do. When we work with children who are of the age of schooling, who also have disabilities, it's actually a very daunting number. It says close out of the 10.6% children with disabilities who are of the school age, 10.2% do not get any form of education. But this is a very alarming number, right? So due to your poverty, due to your disability, if you are being deprived by your right to education, I think that's where we have gone wrong as a country in the first place. So this is something we must answer immediately. Also, Marshi, the problem, again, how I and even my team see is that most of these solutions that are coming, even in the education system, in the or any other field to that matter, it comes with a big assumption. That assumption is it's created towards people or youth or even children who are non-disabled. Like say, for an instance, you develop, for an example, we'll talk about currently with the COVID-19 situation, how people are moving towards online platforms. Now, moving to online platforms is fine and that must happen. But what people forget is how can someone with a disability, say someone with a visual impairment who's blind, can access this? What are the devices that are available for them? So most of these solutions that we come out, even in the education system or any other system, is predominantly based on the fact it's focused on non-disabled people. And this is something that I really think that needs to change and must be addressed immediately. And other thing is, of course, topics like, sexual and reproductive health. This is, again, something that do not get addressed at all. Now, I actually went to a convent. So I was literally brought up by nuns, I would say. So in a very conventional setting like that, to learn about SRHR is not easy. So how did I learn it? I had to come out of my A-levels, everything, and then learn from whatever the material that was given to me. I think this is also the root cause for many issues that we're facing today. I'm sure all of you all also heard about the number of sexual assault many children have been facing, and the news that have been coming out is almost alarming and daunting. So where are we heading to as a country? The fact of the matter is our education system do not address these things. We are prepared, to be, racing horses. We are given a target, get to the target. But we are not trained in case of an emergency, how do we become resilient? To study about things that is not accepted as mainstream education. For example, entrepreneurship. This is utmost key. Now, again, never in my life I thought I'll become an entrepreneur. And almost after 10 to 11 years of corporate world, last year I left my job and I've become an entrepreneur myself. Now, this is something I would have maybe done years ago if I had that opportunity and the knowledge, or if I was guided. But these things are not really given to me. We are continuously trained to become the usual, to the doctor, the accountant, the lawyer, to whatnot. But what happens after that? Even I'm sure that all of you must be, especially in the manufacturing field, if you realize how much of potential someone in the technical team has, or a technician for that matter, right? And the value that person builds around them. Now, these are things that were not taught to us. For us, if you have to be a technician, you have to go to to a vocational training center, and that was kind of looked at as if, someone who failed A-level, so you can do it. But that's not the case. World is moving so fast. There's so many opportunities coming up. World is moving towards more analytically driven worlds, and then the gig economy is actually rising. When I say gig economy, there's a lot of freelancing jobs, startups. These are the new adventures that are out there for us to explore. But does our current education system address these things? Not really. And also, thought-provoking ideas, new inventions, social skills. These are utmost important. So I think while we appreciate and be thankful for what we have been given freely, we also need to now challenge them to push it further. Because like I said, we might in a few years' time, we might become a completely elderly population and a country with elderly population like the Europe. So how do we then move towards a growth? How do we create a growth agency if we are, in the elderly population? We keep on increasing our retirement age, but that's not going to help us eventually. From the 52 we came to 62, then eventually 65 to 70 will go on, but there has to be a stop. So there needs to be different ways of looking at youth empowerment, economical empowerment. There should be more independence. and we have to look at different means to it. And our education system is what can really change that drive for us.
Yeah, that's really amazing to see that. And I would like to give a reminder to our audience that you can send your questions to the chat boxes, because we don't have a separate Q&A session today. But in the meanwhile of the session, we will be answering your questions. So with that reminder, now you were talking about the sexual assaults, I know. Yes, in the past few days, to be honest, the news was full with this sexual assault starting from year 10. So with that, I feel in this current Sri Lanka, this youth is mentally depressed and have been silenced up to the point that not to open their mouth even though they have been raped. So like, I think as we feel, this culture around us plays a major role. So what can the youth work on to empower themselves to overcome this cultural barrier? Now that is the question. What can this youth do to overcome this cultural barrier?
Right. So again, Marcia, here it's that culture of silence that we have reinforced through, traditionally what is being reinforced, and also through our education system. Because especially when it's come for mental health, I would first touch upon, because you touched upon the sexual harassments that has been happening. Now again, this is also when it comes to sexual harassment, a lot of people think this could be some form of a thing in your mind, but not really. This is something that people are day to day facing. We might not know about it, but it's happening out there, and we need to be vocal about it and speak about it. And because of this culture of silence, for far too long, people have been keeping it to themselves. And not just females, even the male counterparts, we have seen how they've been through the society, because the patriarchal system that we created, where even men are asked to be silenced, and so are women. But in this case, of course, women have it harder than anyone else, because like I said, because of the patriarchal system in the country, they are pushed to the limit that they cannot even go seek for sort of guidance, where there are being discrimination, where there's stigma around it. They cannot, there are situations where they cannot even come back to a normal setting and continue with their work, because these are things that we really need to address. Again, this comes as a big part of the youth's involvement, especially addressing, like I said, the status quo, challenging it, seeking answers, holding people accountable, and not being happy with whatever the decision that's been given, because like I said, it could be the bare minimum that they're doing, but we need to challenge it. We need to ask them to do something more, and give justice to these victims. That's something that we must do. And on the other hand, about the mental health, again, with the COVID-19 situation, with the outbreak, what we realized is a lot of people are now moving towards a culture where they face a lot of mental health issues. The reason being given, especially from the working culture that we come from, they have forgotten that we are not just working from home. We are working from home during a pandemic. So it's not your everyday situation. It's completely different. While we're trying to work here, send that report in to meet the deadline, you are supposed to take care of your child at home, or you are supposed to run behind the grocery trucks to get the food. So these are things that must be factored in. And when these are not addressed, that's where your mental health kind of takes a negative approach. And also everything around, everything that we hear, there's a lot of the news that we come out of it, especially of what are the incidents that have been taking place, the number of the COVID deaths, to everything. These are all impacting our mental health. So what can we do about it? I would say, first and foremost thing, what I practice, I try to take a bit of time out of social media or any form of media, and I try to take a break sometimes, because it's important. Because while you work on your official work, you also need to work on you. You need that break, and you shouldn't be ashamed to ask for that break from your employees even. You must draw that line, right? And also the other thing, again, comes to the point about education, where our education does not talk about awareness on mental health conditions, what can be done and how it impacts. These are things that really need to be addressed. And also, longer term mental health conditions can lead to longer term, psychosocial disabilities, or, psychosocial disabilities, even other forms of learning disabilities. So these must be addressed, and there should be a proper guidance, proper counseling given to people. And this is something that we must work on. And other thing is the rigid adherence towards traditional and conventional practices in the country. These are again kind of it kind of puts us in a cage where we cannot exercise our liberty as a youth. Our empowerment does not necessarily come out of these things. When I say this, for example, say if you're 30 and not married, and all of these things coming to you, why you're not married? What can you do from here? Are you going to be single for the rest of your life? No, these are kind of the questions that come to you as well, right? So these are more of a traditional settings. Now, these cannot be addressed necessarily through interventions, but over the period of time, things will take place. But this is where, again, the education must address these things, identify even gender roles. I mean, in most cases, addressing gender roles has been, because even when we grew up, for the longest time, we were told a mother has a particular role, a father has a particular role. After you're married or after you're pregnant, the woman has to stay at home. So these are the kind of things that has been taught to us, or rather it's kind of implied to us, but we have to move out of this. And we as a youth have a responsibility in addressing these things. We have a responsibility in nurturing the generation after us, and make them understand the world is our oyster, and we have to just go and conquer it and get all the opportunities.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, because this was kind of issue that we are not hearing frequently. And with that, we have a very interesting question. When talking about youth empowerment, what control do parents have their own children? What control should they have?
Right. You mean to say parents control over the children, is it?
Yeah.
Right. So here's the thing. Right. No, that's actually an interesting question. So, so I would take the example of where I came from. So I come from a family of all girls. So clearly there wasn't, and even today I am the breadwinner for the family, and I have two sisters who are also supporting the family. But the thing is, control has to be to a certain limit only. Especially today, one thing definitely that must be controlled if you're a child, of course, someone who's less than 18 is on your social media presence, because it is quite a wild place. And there has to be some form of filtering that has to be done for a child. But restrictions or other controls, such as child's right to learn something. For example, like I mentioned about sexual and reproductive health. Now, this is something a child must learn. An adolescent in a certain age must go through this process. Controlling these type of knowledge, these type of discussions can only create unnecessary issues, and also create more of a closed culture where these things are not discussed, where people are misinformed, and ultimately it results in number of violent issues. Now, this is something that we shouldn't control, in my opinion, right? And other thing is, again, parents also must, to a certain level, give that trust to the child. I understand work would be a cruel place, but it's not easy to control a child and put that child out of the world, because we have seen how it could go completely wrong when a child is not informed about the society or told about the society, the misconceptions they have. Again, let me kind of relate it to the work that we do, especially with Enable Lanka, with youth and children with disabilities. Now, when a child is born with a disability, in most cases in this country, it's a parent's or the guardian's attitude that is restricting them from achieving things in life. Because of this sympathetic culture, or rather this charity culture that we have created, right? I mean, I'm sure even when I joined this movement a few years ago, I was also in that mindset, I would say, where we see someone with a disability as a charity case. Okay, we give them something, for good merits, that's what you should do. But we forget, it's important to empower them. It's important for us to push them to their limits, take them to the society, make them learn and understand. So those type of restrictions will only restrict them from achieving greater things than giving them opportunities. And it's difficult to come out of it once you are 18 or 19. It's not easy. And also, very interestingly, these days there's a conversation around disciplining the society. So let me also kind of touch upon that. Now, what do you mean by disciplining someone at the age of 18 or 18 and above? In my books, a child should be disciplined in school, not when that child is coming out of the school and when that child is 18 or 19. Because at that point, a child should be trained to take more responsibility and accountability. Disciplining a child should happen in a smaller or a younger age. So these are some of the things that we really need to address. Although our society shows us this is what's right, we really need to think, we need to question these things. Are we really moving towards this culture of growth, or are we just framing a youth into in a bubble and then sending off to the society, a society of where there's so much of violence, there's so much of negativity? Is that what you're trying to do? How are we going to groom them? This is something that we'll have to do.
Yeah, that's like we have never thought of like empowering a child or making them disciplined. After 18 will not work, because we have seen that there are parents who impose rules on their child even after 18 and 19, even on the things that they study, on their higher education or things like that. So with the point of yours, we can see that there should be a limit of everything. We have more questions from the audience. It asks like, within a school or college administrative system, is there a point where limiting or increasing the abilities of young people to access unhealthy and disempowering things? Do they actually become empowering?
Sorry, Malshi, could you repeat that question? I did not understand that.
Yes, sure. It asks, within a school or college administrative system, is there a point where limiting or increasing the abilities of young people to access unhealthy and disempowering things? I think the question is referring to whether a school or college is itself leading a child towards something negative. So with the disguise of that it is an empowering thing, something like that, I think. Because to put the question in another way, because the question itself is not clear for me also, I think now a child who is not knowledgeable, or a child who is unaware, a teenager or a youth, can be shown a path in disguise as empowering, but it is something really negative, maybe drugs, something like that. So like everyone is taking that. One can say that everyone is taking drugs. This is something everyone do. If you want to step onto the society, you should do this. But someone who is not aware about this can really get into this track and go on the wrong way. So is there a proper rule, or are there proper rules to for our youth to help them in order to protect them from these kind of disempowering things?
Right. So if I got the question right, what you want to know is where the school or the administration that you're a part of says XYZ is right, but that could, not necessarily be right. Is that what you mean?
And yeah. To put the question in a nutshell, it should be it.
Right. Okay. So let me see if I can answer this. Right. So again, shall we go to the point about the sexual harassment? Sorry, sexual and sexual reproductive health. Now, again, now this point, why I would reiterate on it is because of that conventional, traditional setting that we come from, and our school systems are kind of built on it. More often than not, these are some of the topics that are deemed taboo. We do not talk about it. Even menstruation, these are not things that are taught for many. I mean, it's hardly taught to the females or the young girls. It's not even, taught to the boys, because I think they also equally need to know about these changes that happen in a human body, because we are talking about a biological fact here. But we try to take this biological fact and make it look like, a social taboo or a social stigma. This has happened and it's happening. There could be schools or institutions where they are much more progressive and they address things, but more often than not, it's just that they don't address these things, right? Now, we also have seen, because of this point, because of this kind of path we've taken in our country today, we have come to a stage where we look at sex as a crime and rape as not as much, I would say. If you say, for an example, why I say this is, say there is suddenly, a video or whatever that is being leaked online, right? And we would all, speak bad about it. We'll talk about how much of shame it brought to the society or that person's family and etc. Right? But we also see rapists coming out of the prison and living a fine life. So the problem is our voice needs to be raised towards not the sexual activity with consent, but on the rapist, which is without consent. Now, these are things that must be given from school, because from school itself, we are kind of given that notion, if you take sex or sexual activities are a crime. I mean, at least that's what we've been taught to think, right? So we think, okay, this is bad, we shouldn't even learn about it. But we realize once we come to the society, it's completely different. It's almost that we don't groom our youth to take over the world in a holistic manner. We give them all the knowledge, we give them all the academics they require. We get them to the universities with the highest GPAs and exit scores, right? But we don't train them to be social human beings. This is a problem. So I guess I answered your question. So these are some of those things that we restrict and don't discuss, but which are important in order to empower the youth.
True, but too late for my next question with that part. This is all about the personality of a youth. And this is all about how one reacts to a particular situation. Because if there are 10 people, or the 10 people will react to the same situation in 10 different ways. One person can say like, no, I don't have anything. But the other can make use of everything that he has and reach what he or she wants. So with that introduction to my last question, though as a third world country, we lack in many resources, we can clearly see that there are many outcomes in the youth that they manage the available resources to be successful. Because we see that children from the rural areas itself are getting straight A's and getting into the universities itself and making new innovations, being creative, more than the ones who have the resources more available. Likewise, what are the available opportunities you see in our country which can be utilized by managing the available resources?
Right. So one thing, and one of the most important thing, like I said, free education, right? Yeah. Now, of course, it requires reform to the education to encourage the students to think more critically, and like I said, to ask questions and, build that confidence in them, build that character in them that I also kind of touched upon earlier when you asked about what is youth empowerment. So that's one thing, definitely. And the other thing is, now we are, kind of experiencing, all of us, that is the free healthcare that is being given. I would say this is something that is extremely valuable to us at a time like this, when we see people are struggling. We should be thankful for this system that is in place, right? And however, all of these things, I would say, needs a lot of reform eventually, and it has to happen. So improving on the academic performance is something that we need to focus on. This is where I say, rather than relying on question-based examinations, we look at more practical examinations. This is where you can bring the vocational training aspect, the social skills aspect, and put into the education and make it more holistic for people and the young students that we have, right? And also the other thing is about technology. Now, this is very important. Once again, with the unprecedented challenges of COVID-19, we realize the technology and the use of it in our day-to-day life is a must, and it's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So how do we adapt, and how do we make it accessible and affordable to everyone? This is something that must be addressed. And on this technology point of view, I would like to share a thought because some of you might not know, especially for people, young people with disabilities or people with disabilities in general, they use various kind of devices and technologies to access the devices that were developed for a non-disabled person. For an example, someone who's blind, they use something called the screen reader. I don't know, you would have heard, maybe when you travel in the bus or on the road, you suddenly hear like a robotic voice on the phone saying something very, in a speedy manner. So you wonder what this is. So that's pretty much a screen reader. So whatever I see on the screen or you see on the screen reader reads it out to the person who's blind or visually impaired. Now, these type of technology can be easily made available for people and trained on these things, right? And this is important. And again, a good example I always say, because people also ask, so this would cost me something. Why should I invest on it? These are the questions that people ask. But if you look at it, we are all using some form of assistive technology or a device. For an example, you take the scissor that you're using at home. The main purpose that you're using the scissor at home is our hands or rather fingers cannot do any form of cutting. We cannot cut a paper using our fingers. Therefore, we have developed the scissor, which is my assistive device. So the same way, if you look at someone with a disability, it's the same mechanism. You are just giving them something to access easily because currently whatever they have is not fulfilling that purpose. So when you talk about assistive technology, it's not predominantly or focused towards people with disabilities. It's a universal design. It's for all of us. And another thing I would say, now these are kind of the things that would create opportunities. These are the kind of things that would empower the youth, right? Now, for an example, especially with this pandemic situation, how things kind of change for the youth, especially, the disabled youth. Now, for years, what they have been asking is, can I have flexible working hours? Can I work from home? Or, can you, give me a larger space because my wheelchair cannot be, maneuvered inside this workspace. Now, today, with the pandemic, we are working from home. We are maintaining social distance. We do have flexible working hours. So what I'm saying is the nature itself has given them justice. Now we shouldn't forget this, right? Now these are the kind of things our education, our healthcare, everything needs to address. It has to look at a very holistic view, because if not, we are not going to move forward, right? Now, other point why I bring this is, now, like I mentioned earlier, we are now moving towards a more, moving towards an aging population, right? So eventually with age, you will acquire a disability, right? When you acquire a disability, what is the, has our infrastructure changed? Has our resources changed to accommodate or to, give access to me or to you? So the point that I'm trying to make is, you can ignore people in this process, but not for long, because eventually we are all going to experience it and we need to address it now itself, right? And the other thing is, cultivating a very trustworthy and safe space. Again, this is something that's really missing and needs a lot of interventions, especially in education and also in employment. A lot of people, main reason for our, mental health issues or the depression, what we go through is that because we don't have a space to connect. We don't have a space to, share our thoughts and feelings, because that's not something that's encouraged in this society, right? So you need to have that right to express yourself, and it has to be enabled through the systems that are there. And the other point is, especially on breaking stereotypes, the myths, the traditional beliefs, I would say, because these beliefs, of course, certain customs you have to maintain. I'm not saying that you need to take, forget about worshipping of parents with with betel leaves. What I'm saying is those are customs and that's out of respect. But there are things that we really need to challenge and come out of. And these are the things that we need to address in order for us to become the next level, I would say. We have the resources, we have the benefit, it's just we don't know how to take the benefits out of it. For this is why we need the right set of leaders out there, right? And I'm sorry if I'm giving a longer answer, but I would like to go to the civic engagement. This is why the youth of this country must now raise their voices, opinions. Doesn't matter which party you support, doesn't matter which narrative you are in, it doesn't matter. What is right, what is wrong. You must raise that voice. But the problem here is, I think this is very evident in our social circles, that people tend to question the person against your political views than the politician who did the wrong thing. So this is, we would rather bully my friend or my acquaintance than actually question the politician who did the wrong thing. So these are the kind of things that we really need to change as a youth if you are trying to become, if you're trying to get to the next level, I would say.
Yeah. Now, with that, I got so many points to my head, but as the time constraints, I would like to ask only one last point from you. Now, as you said, we can manage the available resources. There are people who did it in order to get into the next level. The resources are available. With that, I want to ask you, what has this personality development to do with this youth empowerment? Can you give a very small description about that, just to touch upon?
No, thank you. I think that's very important. Maybe I was a mistake in my explanations earlier. So I think, again, personality grooming is utmost important, right? Now, I would say, let me go to the time that I was also a CA Student Society member and working as a intern to an audit firm, so that we can really connect. Now, when my internship started, at that point, all what I saw was trying to get through the exam once in every 6 months, get the good results and move out to a good job after 4 years of completing your articles. Now, had I done that, I don't think I would be the Chris that I am today. Because I did not follow that rule that was set out by someone, I feel like I've been able to disrupt it and become the person that I'm today, right? And in order for me to come to this place, there were multiple things that helped me out, right? One thing is I had to improve on my language. Now, a lot of people again think because of my name or whatever, that my language was quite polished, I was all out there. Not really. It wasn't, because all my life, my schooling, I was in single medium, and I was born and bred in this country. So all of these things. So I had to push myself to learn something new, improve my language, which is important. And the other thing is that also about my social understanding on issues, and also it's social understanding issues, not just locally, but also internationally. Now, this is very important, because when you build a career, when you build a personality, you need to connect with people. Now, say you are gathered in a conference. If you are to run up to someone and talk, say a speaker, a well-renowned person, a businessman, or someone who's coming from the health sector, or etc., you need to go up to this person and first build the conversation. Now, to strike that conversation, you need to know about something. You cannot just go there and just be like, hello, how are you? And then go on with the conversation. You need to connect. In order to connect, you need to understand what's happening in the world. I'm not saying to know everything, but at least what are the pressing issues? How can I reach this person? Because striking that conversation, something that's mattered to me, will create that impression. Okay, you are a well-aware person, right? Now, if someone comes to me and talk about entrepreneurship, I'll be elated. I would love to sit down and talk for hours, or about inclusion. I would love to talk about it. So these are kind of things that actually help me. And other most important thing is finding different networks. Now, again, the CA Student Society is something that I really grew myself in. Not just pushed me to my limits, but it also kind of opened many doors and avenues to me, right? Just like the CA Student Society, after that, I joined many other youth networks. It's important that we be in these networks. People might say, I don't have the time, my exams are coming up. All of these you can give me, but these are not excuses in the future. Because again, I would reiterate, it doesn't matter if you have a first class, or it doesn't matter if you have, the highest scores for whatever the exam you set. Ultimately, it's you as a person, how you go and amplify not just your work, but become a true ambassador of the person that you're working. So for you to do that, these networkings are crucial. And this is one of the most important things. There are many youth organizations. I don't know whether I can mention these here, but of course, if you reach out to me, I can easily connect you with these networks, which will actually give you the boost to the career and also to you as a person.
That's really nice to hear, because even to hear about the CAS itself and how it helped you to groom yourself. It's really nice to hear, because we as the current committee also, we are taking the best of that. And in order to empower youth, as you said, I would like to get it into a summary. It is simply what you can do. You should not give any excuses if you really want to empower yourself. Doesn't matter if the government give you so many other things, give you the resources or anything. If you don't have the will to do that, you will never do that. Isn't it, ma'am?
That plus I would also say, sorry, I'm adding a small point to it. Again, I would say don't also wait for the government or the authorities to give you things, because their priorities would have now changed, which we have seen. Now the priority is completely different. It's more towards the healthcare. So if you're not being given something, look at different avenues, and we can always find some form of a connection. And the willpower at one point, it might, how can I say, the willpower might not always be there for you because of all these issues that are around. But if you really need to find someone to confide in, if you need to find someone to talk to, you have to do it. And willpower doesn't mean you know bottle up all your emotions and try to go out there and be a hero. That's not going to help you. That will break you in a minute. So be open for emotions. That's very important. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It matters. I mean, what matters is you're open for ideas, you're open for emotions, and also feel free to be vulnerable. Because if you break, you will also make. And I also think good things fall apart for better things to come up in your life, right? I mean, I'm not saying you should have positivity in you, but you shouldn't have extreme positivity where your house is on fire and you'll be like, no, everything will be fine. That's not going to work. So you have to be mindful about, you know, how you also portray yourself, where you draw the lines, your boundaries. It's equally important.
Yeah, with that again, I feel that the 6 C's plays a big role in that. So with as the time constrains us, I have to wrap up the session now. And it was indeed a very wonderful session, which we discussed about a very vast topic as the youth empowerment. We cannot get it into a nutshell through an hour. But still, thank you so much for joining with us by taking like more than an hour from your very busy schedule. And what made me more interesting on this topic, the discussion with you, is that the note, the privilege should serve the purpose, and in order to serve the purpose, you should be empowered. In order to be empowered, you taught us about 6 C's and how to go for that, things like that, and how to groom yourself with available resources. Thank you so much for joining with us today, ma'am, because that was really a very interesting session. And we wish you all the very best for all your future endeavors and for all your work that you do. Thank you so much for engaging with us, ma'am.
Thank you, Marsha. Thank you, CS Student Society and everyone, the amazing audience, the great questions. Looking forward to future engagement as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wish. And with that, as we are reaching towards the end of the 4th session in Gear Up Online series, we, as the organizing committee, would like to request you all to fill the feedback form, which will be open right after you leave this Zoom session. Please be kind enough to spare a very few minutes on giving back your valuable feedback for us to bring you more and more interesting sessions in the future as well. Thank you everyone in advance for submitting the feedback form, and thank you everyone who joined with us for the 4th session on Gear Up Online series. We hope that this session gave you a huge support on building a better version of yourself and to build yourself for your future. Stay tuned with us for more sessions in the future as we will be continuing the series. This is Marsha Shamika from CS Student Society. Thank you and have a nice day.